welcome to Best Laid Plans. This is your host, Sarah Hart-Unger, and this is a podcast where we talk all things planning and planning adjacent. Today, the episode we're going to do is 10 things to consider if you're feeling scattered. And guess what? I came up with this idea because I had been feeling a little bit scattered recently, and it's very common for me to create an episode inspired by things I am struggling with or handling in my real life. And I thought to myself, what are the things that help? What are the messages that I need to share with myself right now? And then decided this would make a great topic to talk about with all of you. So if you are going through a tough period right now, I was really stressed out a couple of weeks ago, just felt like all of the pieces weren't fitting. I think it was really just a lot to do with the adjustment to our new school routine, which always takes longer than I think it's going to take. I should really make a note of that to give myself some time when at the end of August every year, things just seem hopeless. But honestly, things have settled out a little bit more now. I've caught up in many spheres and I'm feeling better. But this episode will come in handy for those times when I'm feeling all over the place again, as I know they will happen. So here we go with 10 things to consider if you're feeling scattered. A note for all of you, but also a note to my future self. Number 1, plan out your day. So luckily, this is not a practice that I tend to abandon when I'm stressed out. And I know that it always helps me. And the more thoroughly I let myself do it, the better it serves me. But every single day, it really helps for me to spend 10 minutes in the morning thinking through my priorities for the day. You guys know my nested goals system involves taking your list for the week and looking at that as you plan your day. And I really recommend doing that every single morning. It really doesn't take longer than 5 or 10 minutes. And that for me even includes time to fill out an entire A5 size blank planner page with my kind of plans for the day. But those minutes where I figure out the time that I actually have, the energy that I have, what my priorities are, and what fires I am likely to have to put out, and figuring out how that can actually happen, it pays off such dividends for the rest of the day and is a practice that I know I cannot abandon. So I highly recommend doing this. For me, I actually like to set up my daily planner page to also not just have the to-dos that feel essential, but to capture those small habit wins and track the other things that I hope to build into my day. And I've talked about this before, but you guys know I love to track my little daily habits, my movement, things like that. And you can dial that up and down depending on how you're feeling. If you know you're going to have an incredibly packed day and you're not going to have time for all of your habits, maybe just make one line for like something that served me today and you aim to fill that out. Whatever your ritual looks like, and it can be individual for each person, I just recommend not leaving your planning rituals behind just because you're feeling stressed. If anything, this is going to be even more essential during a period when you feel extra scattered. So that's number 1, plan out your day. Number 2 is to start your day input free. Many days, I don't look at my email until 8 or 9 a.m. And I know on the days that I manage to push this off for as long as possible are the days I feel the least scattered. And that's despite the fact that I get up pretty early. So usually I have the first few hours of my day without any inputs. I don't want to know what people want me to look at. I don't want to see some new tasks before I've even processed what I've already decided to do for my day. There are times when it's essential, like if I'm on call, I have to see if there are new patients on the list because I don't want to go in and kind of not have time allocated for that. But in general, I would advise, if you can, to see how long you can go doing your own thing without checking for outside inputs. I wouldn't say my morning routine is tech-free. I do use Headspace, for example, and I often do a couple of the New York Times games in the morning, but most of it doesn't involve looking at a screen, and that's on purpose. It helps me to feel less scattered overall, and I have since learned that apparently this is trendy. I was doing some YouTube perusal for new planners, and there were a bunch of like productivity people talking about this secret to like billionaires know to start your day on the right foot. And apparently it's to not look at your phone. So I totally agree. I'm on board with that. And I guess I would summarize that as if you can start your day input free for as long as is practical. Maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour, maybe you can actually make it until mid-morning. Obviously that depends on what you do for work and when you're going to have to check in, but I often make it from around 5 to around 8 without looking at any inputs. And I love it when I can do that. All right, number 3, curate your news and other inputs. So when you do decide to go ahead and look and see what's going on, make sure that you are looking at what you want to be looking at and not just what is being served to you. That includes, in these tumultuous times, deciding how you want to get your news. You could have a million alerts set, and then you're going to be like pummeled by 10 critical stories like right after waking up. But you could also have your own processes where you seek out the news when you are ready for it. And I highly recommend trying that if you haven't before. I personally tend to use NPR's Up First as my main news source. I listen to it pretty much every day, usually as I'm driving. If not while I'm driving, then often later in the morning, if I'm home, I'm putting away the dishes or something like that. And then I'll often do a few other political adjacent podcasts per week. I personally really like Pantsuit Politics, and I like a lot of Ezra Klein stuff, but obviously that is going to vary, and I'm not being prescriptive at all here. Listen to the sources that make you feel calmer and not more angry, and that you feel like give an adequately balanced perspective. So those are my favorites, but I think just choosing what seems to work for you and making it something that you seek out rather than notifications that are coming to you, for me, really prevents me from feeling extra scattered and extra stressed. Number 4, when I'm feeling scattered, it really helps me to plan in some movement, but be really realistic about it. A schedule to work out that you won't actually follow is only going to be stressful. And yet for me, movement within reason, I don't run anymore, but I do other things. Movement is so helpful to help me reduce stress. And if I can get outside for a period of time, even if it's short, that helps as well. So I think through my day, realistically, where can this movement fit in? But again, being really careful that if I have a really packed work day, or if I can't guarantee a good night's sleep the night before, because maybe I'm going to get paged, I don't plan in a essential workout that would have to be done in the early morning hours or something I'd have to cancel if I didn't get sleep. Really be realistic about what actually fits and set the bar as low as is practical. Again, for me, if I can get a 10 or 20 minute walk, then I count that as a walk, and I feel really, really good about that these days. All right. And then one more. We're in the top 5, but I have 10 here. Number 5 is to look at your sleep. So are you extra tired? Because for me, and I think for many people, that makes everything else so much harder. So we've talked about this as a foundation habit before, but it does tend to be something that can fall away when you're particularly stressed. I mean, honestly, the time that I am most likely to stay up night anxiously strolling is when I'm on call and super stressed. And yet that is just going to make everything I have to do the next day 10 times more difficult because I'm not centered. I'm just not thinking in a rational and calm manner when I am sleep deprived. So I highly recommend, if you're in one of those scattered seasons, to make sure you're taking a very intentional look at how you're sleeping, whether that's quantifying it using a device or just paying attention to your bedtime and paying special attention to those hours when you could choose to go to sleep or do something else, and really think about what makes the most sense for you in that particularly tough season. All right, we're going to take a break, and then I will get to the next 5 of my 10 that I came up with. All right, we will be back in a minute. Today's episode comes to you with support from IXL. The autumn season is in full swing, and IXL helps keep your homeschool lessons or school enrichment structured and steady, whether you're following a set curriculum or creating your own. I personally love the simplicity that IXL offers. I don't have to dig through endless resources. IXL is organized by grade and topic, so I can jump right into what each child needs. My kids have been using IXL for years, and I really trust it to help solidify concepts and meet them where they are. Just like each leaf changes at its own pace, each child learns differently. IXL adapts so kids can move ahead when they're ready or revisit the topic until it truly clicks. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Best Laid Plans listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/plans. Visit IXL.com/plans to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. Today's episode is brought to you with support from Green Chef. I love fall energy, like the fresh start of back to school, plus all of that delicious fall food. Warm, homey flavors just make everything feel comforting. Plus, with the new seasonal energy, it's the perfect time to reset and bring healthy habits back into focus. Green Chef can help you do just that, even if your season is packed with school festivities and events. Green Chef's meals are made up of real, clean ingredients, and they help you build lasting healthy habits without the hassle. With 80 plus dietitian-approved weekly meal options, Green Chef makes it easy to find meals that fit your lifestyle. Pick from Mediterranean, gluten-free, plant-based, and protein-heavy. There's even a gut and brain health option and calorie-smart choices too. They really are family-friendly, and my kids are always so excited for our Green Chef dinners. Make this fall your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50bestlaid and use code 50bestlaid to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50bestlaid, as in 50bestlaid, at greenchef.com/50bestlaid. Today's episode is brought to us support from Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. That's why you should say yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for $15 per month. Mint Mobile's plans start at $15 per month, and there are no unexpected overages or hidden fees. All Mint Mobile plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. So ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/BLP. That's mintmobile.com/BLP. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, I am back, and we are talking about the 10 things that I've come up with to consider if you are feeling scattered. As I mentioned previously, this is a little bit of a note to self as I'm headed into a call week, things that are really important for me to remember, and that seems so easy to remember when I'm not in a stressed out phase. But honestly, I might print out these show notes and put them above my desk because I need to remember all of these things, and I'm sure they will help some of you listeners as well. All right, number 6, figure out what you can make easier. I feel like this is a little nod to Kendra Adachi, who goes by the Lazy Genius, but there are some things that you just don't need to be extra about, and there might be an easy way out that might make sense for you. The examples I came up with here, I had a couple. Number 1 would be my work lunches. I felt like I had to reinvent the wheel every week, and I was often kind of last minute trying to figure out what to pack. And then one day I was like, you know what? I'd love to take leftovers for lunch, but sometimes there just aren't leftovers. And if there's no leftovers, let me just make Plan B's default be a packaged salad. So let me make sure I generally have a few pre-packaged salads with an expiration date a few days out that I buy at the beginning of the week. Let me make sure I have a few of those on hand. And I have a backup to that. If I'm out of salads and we have no leftovers, I'll have some burritos or other options in the freezer that I can take as option C. Then I have 3 good options. All of them are easy, and it's much more realistic for me to make sure I'm stocked up on salads and frozen burritos than it is for me to think about some complicated meal prep. I would love it if I had gourmet mason jar salads to eat every day with different ingredients and varied things, but right now, with my current lifestyle, this works. It's reasonably healthy. It checks the box and it makes things easier. So it's a solution that I can get behind. Maybe another time I'll think of something else, but for right now, that makes my life easier. Another example would be mornings. I came to the conclusion pretty recently that my husband and I do not both need to be there to kind of run the morning show in our family home. We have 3 kids, ages 7 to 13, and we have to leave the house at about 7:30. And really, the 2 bigger ones are pretty self-sufficient at this point. And even the 7-year-old, who will be 8 in December, can do a lot of things for herself as well. So there not to be 2 parents flitting around and telling everyone, finish your breakfast, time to do this. Instead, we've given them more responsibility. And as a result, they have magically been able to do a lot more on their own. And I found that it's very doable on the 3 mornings when it's mostly just me. And I think my husband feels the same way about the 2 mornings that he's taken over. So that makes it easier for both of us. And it means that I can plan some workouts that are really easy to fit in. So for example, I chose a Pilates studio that is less than 10 minutes from our house. So now Monday mornings, my husband does the routine. I drive a very short distance to my workout, and it feels easier for both of us. On Tuesday, we flip things, and my husband's usually out running while I drive the kids. Easier for both of us to have times when we're all the way on or all the way off, and it gets us both more time for ourselves. So figuring out solutions that make things easier can really pay off. And that sounds kind of vague, and I guess it is, but really thinking through things that you do every day and recognizing when maybe you're giving yourself more work than you need to can be helpful. Okay, we're about to get to the next item, but confession, I just had to stop the recording because my Instacart order was delivered. And this is just an example of figuring out what could be easier. I was taking my youngest to a birthday party all morning, and then I knew I had to get some podcast work done in the afternoon. So I would have loved to go to the grocery store and browse around and make sure I get the salads with the expiration dates that are the farthest away, but I decided to just order Instacart and make things easier. And so that I'm really proud of myself for doing, because now I have ingredients for dinner that I'm going to make. I have stuff for lunches for next week, and it was just a great streamlined solution for me today. All right, number 7 is to make a plan for your inboxes. Now, I get very, very stressed when my inboxes start to get to a point when I just know there's stuff buried in them that I don't totally have a handle of. It's the stress of uncertainty, and it's not something that's unique to me. David Allen talks about this a lot. It's one of the reasons why in his work, the idea of a full task capture is so incredibly powerful. And I am good about full task capture. We've talked about that. I empty my inboxes to 0, but when things get really out of hand, sometimes that really falls by the wayside for longer than I'd like, and the pressure can start to mount. One thing that helps me a lot, other than finally getting them clear, which honestly does do wonders for my mental state, but if I don't have time to do that, I can at least do a triage. So sit there and be like, let me just make sure there's nothing in here that is going to be extremely problematic if I leave this for a few more days. So do a triage and look at everything. And then number 2, set a time on my calendar and put in my planner when I'm actually going to clear things out. Because knowing that I have, okay, you know what? This inbox is terrible, but on Wednesday afternoon, I have nothing else planned and I'm going to spend 2 hours making sure I go through and answer things and file things and figure out what needs to be done. If I know when it's going to be taken care of, that in itself will reduce some stress. So making sure that you have a plan for your inboxes can really help when you are feeling scattered or overwhelmed. Number 8, and this has taken me a while to figure out, and I'm still practicing it, but figure out what you can let go of. I have 3 kids. I have a clinical job. I wrote a book. I have a podcast. You listening to this, you have a ton going on too. I know this from your emails. You are professors, you are lawyers, you are stay-at-home moms with multiple young children. You have elderly relatives that need you. You are dealing with your kids fresh off to college. You have just gotten a promotion. You are going back to school. Everybody has stuff going on, and no one has the time to do every single thing that they'd like to do in the best way possible. And we'll get to that best way possible in a couple of tips from now, but everyone probably needs to take time every once in a while and figure out what can be let go or what can be considered optional when things get just overly full or too stressful. So for my example, I did not release a newsletter in September. I know you guys were all waiting for it, sitting there with bated breath with your inbox like, hello, where's the September notes? No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I love that many of you respond to the newsletter and that some of you enjoy it. I think if you're not signed up, you can subscribe. As I said, it's monthly or less, so you're certainly not going to get spammed. But yeah, I didn't do one last month because it was back to school and things got crazy. And I'll actually have to look. I would not be surprised if I've missed a September newsletter release on other years as well. But then I have to remind myself, this is a free newsletter, so it's not like I'm letting anyone down. I would never, for example, cancel a session of one of my courses where people have, invested their own time and funds to attend. I've never ever not followed through with that kind of a thing. But when there are things that I put out and do that are really nice to do, but not entirely required, I have to sometimes remind myself of that. So every once in a while, I let things like the newsletter go. I also, you guys know, decided not to run a cohort of Best Laid Plans Academy this fall. I know people wanted it and I knew it was going to be too much. So I'm very happy that I decided to let that go for myself. And then even in the clinical realm, like the other day, I had a really busy day. I called everyone and I contacted people with results and I did everything that was necessary, but I left without getting all of my notes done. I generally like to get all of my notes done. It's just part of like how I tend to operate. But at the end of the day, sometimes I have to remember that's just documentation. And on some occasions, I can get that done later. There are certain balls in life that just won't break if they're dropped. And I have to sometimes embrace that, embrace the places where there are wiggle room, because there are places where there are not. Sometimes I also do things like get takeout. So I mentioned that I Instacarted my groceries so I could make dinner. But if I had decided to drop that ball and just order some DoorDash or something, that would have been okay too. And I do that on occasion as well. All right, number 9 is to get some assistance. I'm really good at that, about doing that on the home front, whether it's from my husband, whether it's from people who work with us at home. We've had a nanny who's worked for our family for 12 years. And a lot of times I'll ask her to do random things. She doesn't mind, and she has time since the kids are in school a lot of the day. And so I can ask her to drop a package at UPS or help with the grocery shopping or things like that. I'm not as good about doing that on the work end. I've gotten better in the clinical realm. I think I've talked about how there was a time when I was afraid to ask someone to fax things for me. And then I realized they can help do that for you so that you can spend more time on the phone with a patient or things like that. And then in my creative work, I feel like I'm still trying to work on figuring out what can be outsourced. I have things that I always outsource. You guys know I've done a behind the scenes before, but things like book publicity, that's a ball that I don't want to drop, but I think I'm getting to the point where it's time to just reach out to somebody and say, hey, will you at least pitch podcasts for me and book them for me and see what you can do in terms of getting me on some shows? That would be great, because if I leave that for myself to do, of course, there are shows and places where I'm personally connected, where it's great for me to reach out, but there's also shows where I'm sure their audience would be interested in the content, but I just have no relationship with the host. And so if I could have someone do some of those connections for me, like I know others have, and I know that because I get tons of emails from various agents saying, hey, I have this great creator and they'd love to be on your show. And a lot of times I say no, I've talked about that. But when it's a great fit or the topic is great, I say yes. And I'm sure that is true for others as well. So yeah, this is an area where I need to follow my own advice. But number 9 is to get some assistance when there's just too much to do. And then finally, number 10, I alluded to this previously, but it's accept good enough. Whether you're outsourcing or doing something yourself, accept good enough work. I've talked about doing this clinically, accepting B+ notes, making sure all of the essential information is there, like your patient's plan and what meds they're on. That has to be accurate. So someone pulling up the chart has accurate information. But does your history of present illness need to have a million different points? Do you need to capture every single thing that's said in the room? AI is doing that to some extent. Some people are using AI platforms, and those notes aren't perfect either, by the way, because I've seen them. But I guess my point is, make sure that you are doing things as well as they need to be done and not well above and beyond that. Good enough means pre-made salads. It means 30-minute strength workouts. It means maybe having somebody pitch other podcasts rather than having personal notes to send out to the top 100 podcasts in the productivity sphere. You can only do so much, and we all have to make choices. So some of those choices are around where we want to push and where we want to compromise to make sure that what we are getting done and what we're experiencing matches with our limited time and bandwidth. So with that, I'm going to take my own advice. I really, really hope this episode is helpful for you if you are going through a busier time, if you're feeling more scattered. And I'm just going to read my 10 things that I came up with one more time to summarize. Number 1 was plan out your day. That's spending those 10 minutes of the morning really thinking through things. Number 2 was to start your day input free, maybe a couple hours if you can swing it, where you're only doing your own thing and looking at your stuff or creating or doing your routines, but not seeking inputs from others. Number 3, curating your news and other inputs. And by the way, when I say inputs from others, I don't mean your kids. I mean notifications. Just to be clear, there is definitely inputs from other humans many times in my mornings, definitely before 8 a.m. So now that I'm saying that, I just want to make sure that is clear. All right, number 3, curate your news and other inputs rather than having, accepting whatever is coming to you. Number 4 is to plan in some movement, but be realistic. Number 5 is to look at your sleep. Number 6 is to figure out what you can make easier. Number 7 is to make a plan for your inboxes. Number 8 is to figure out what you can let go of. Number 9 is to get some assistance. And number 10 is to accept good enough. All right, with that, I hope that you are having a wonderful week and not too stressful week. Please, I've gotten some great recs for planners to talk about, as it is definitely paper planner release season and it's very exciting. Maybe next week I'll even have my own Hobonichi box to report on. I'm super excited about that. But yeah, keep your questions coming. Send them to me in an email. Make sure you're signed up for the newsletter. I do think I should be releasing one in October that is going to include some course information. So if you want to be on the list to be first dibs for those things, just make sure you're signed up at theshoebox.com/newsletter. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Happy planning, happy Monday, and I'll be back in your feed next week.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.